Hello and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve podcast. Today's guest is an entrepreneur, public speaker, a podcaster, and much, much more. His name is Sam Mitchell. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
Well, hey, thanks for having me on. Good to be here. I remember hearing about you through Caden McElwin.
Oh wow, yeah, great guy. I saw that he was on your show as well, and I was like, that's cool, man. Um, your show as well. Man, talk about like the amount of different guests you've had on the show. I saw that you're a wrestling fan, like myself.
Oh yeah, big time
so,
wrestling fan. I've had a
so
lot of them on Mick Foley, Kane, RVD,
it's like
and it's an official because we just added him because of he confirmed it. I'll be having Jake the Snake. So,
mad. Okay, cool. Damn. How are you landing these? Like, do you just reach out to them directly or
yeah, most of them,
cool?
except some of them are a little story with Mick. There was some behind the scenes.
Mm,
And Al was through a meet and greet. He kind of
cool.
graciously volunteered. I thought, okay. And then the rest were mainly through the publicist, or another way was there's a big event in Indy that they do once a year called the Squared Circle Expo.
Oh, nice one.
And there's a
Okay.
lot of wrestlers there, and that's why I landed a couple of them too.
What would you say have been some of the better interactions with professional wrestlers? Because you do hear sometimes that it's kind of a mixed bag. Like for the most part, they love the fans and it's positive. Sometimes some people are a bit difficult. Like, what's been your experience?
I think it just depends on what you do and what the time is. I mean, and it depends on who they are. Victoria, even though she was like a mean bully in the ring, I'm gonna spoil it. Nicest human being alive, or one of them at least. Mick Foley, same here. For me, at least, my experience is one of the nicest times I've had the chance to interact with him. He's been good to me, at least.
I never
And
forget
most of them
that.
are just good people. It's just that you have some fans who are pesky,
Yeah.
and those wrestlers aren't afraid to become manufactured a-holes to tell them, hey, get away from me.
It's just weird, isn't it? Like, let's talk about that for a second. How it's not just wrestlers as well, it's like celebrities. Anyone that becomes famous to a certain proportion of the public, there there's this kind of feeling, I suppose. I don't get it personally, but like that they're entitled to you. Like I saw one the other day, it was Travis Scott, and he was walking, I don't know, through like a gate or something, and there's like a little young fan, and the fan tried to like grab his waist. And he sort of I thought he handled it really well. He basically kind of batted the hand away, but not like aggressively, kind of more of like making a point, saying like you don't do that. But then he stood and posed with the kid for a photo. So it's like, here's a lesson, but I'm not going to punish you completely. There you go. But when it's someone, well, it doesn't matter actually what age it is. I think it's important to just kind of set these boundaries. I think with wrestling, it's weird because like you get these people that queue up at the airport at like 4 in the morning, and I don't know what kind of reaction they're expecting from it. Like if you've been on a plane for several hours, the last thing I think you want to do is take photos or sign stuff. But like a lot of them, they do. Like I saw like Rey Mysterio doing that and stuff. But sometimes they refuse because that's fair. And I think a lot of the time, as you said, it's like knowing how to approach the situation. Like if you're coming up to like queuing in like a meet and greet, then that's kind of the appropriate venue for it. And like, of course, they should be in theory nice, like accommodating. Um, but it's a weird one that the sort of entitlement thing.
It
I've never
is. I
understood
mean, I
that.
also think it's the time span. Like the meet and greet, I don't see a problem with it. If you ranch them in the elevator and you're just waiting to get off, for me, I don't see a problem with it. Now, if they're involved with something, then no. Like if they're eating a meal with their family, no. Don't
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
bother them. That's time with family. Don't do that.
I've had this twice. There was one. So I lived in Europe for a while. There was a famous singer who was in like one of the shops, and he turns out he lived in the same area as me. Small world. And but he was with his daughter. I was like, yeah, nah, not appropriate. Another time, I was in a coffee shop in London, and David Tennant's there, and it's probably around the time of the 50th anniversary for Doctor Who, and I'm just kind of like, it's Doctor Who. David Tennant is one of my heroes, but he's feeding his daughter in a pushchair with his wife. This is not the appropriate setting. So, and you just walk away, you know? Some people wouldn't. I don't know. I mean, I think I get the idea of being starstruck. I totally do. I think it's very normal. But at the same time, like, it is just another person. Like, I think you have to kind of sometimes try to mentally put yourself into that. Like, how would I feel kind of thing, which could be tricky. I don't know. But that's the way I look at it.
Right. That's a fair way to look at it.
Outside of wrestling, who else have you met celebrity wise that's been kind of
A lot of America's Got Talent and American Idol contestants. So Manny Harvey, James Durbin is an example. You're British, you might know him from Britain's Got Talent. David Cubby.
watch it? But yeah, I get you, I get you. Who were the people that stood out the most for you, like, or had an impact on you?
Well, the biggest autism advocate out there is Dr. Temple Grandin, and she agreed to be on my show, and we actually have a strong connection with her.
Oh, that's good. Like when it comes to these celebrities, you say like some of them obviously advocate for autism, and we're going to talk about that in a bit. But um, in what ways have they kind of tried to help or show their support, other than obviously appearing on your show? That's a good start. But is there any other ways they've kind of offered to show their support?
Well, I think what they do too, I think, like Mick Foley said, he became an advocate for autism accidentally because
Okay, makes sense.
his son's on the spectrum. So he had to become an autism advocate, which makes sense in my view. But some like to hop into the world. I mean, an actress on Once Upon a Time, Sarah Tomko from the series Resident Alien, Sneaky Pete. She advocates for mental health by appearing on the show and just helping out the mental health world.
Yeah, it's important, I think, to well, even that word, like it's a new word that I've come across, advocacy. Like trying to kind of not just spread awareness, but try to show your support that step further. Like, okay, I'm going to take this step to move things forward. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to get people more understanding about it. Um, but let's delve into that a little bit. I mean, when it comes to advocacy for autism, what are some of the ways that, let's say, the best ways that people can help?
Well, for example, don't give us a look at us if there's a meltdown appearing at Walmart. I know it's
Yeah.
hard to tell the difference, but there is a difference between a tantrum and a meltdown. Tantrum is it's what your child doesn't get if a teddy bear's on the shelf and he's complaining about it.
Hmm.
Meltdown is it due to the buzzers going off. The buzzers for a fire emergency at school.
I've had a lot of friends over the years that have autism, and so I feel like I'm not going to sit and call myself an expert by any means, but like I understand when someone has autism and like how you approach that. And like you said, it's a spectrum, so that it varies. Some are more acute, some, yeah, you have like a really bad, um, what would be the right term? I mean, I had a friend when I was a kid who used to have seizures, and I was 7, I think. So I knew something was different, I think, sometimes in his reactions to things. But I think when you see someone seizing up, it's quite a visual, and it's a lot to take in, and you understand like, okay, this is serious. But I think when I got older and I started going into the work world and I work with people with autism and stuff, I think then you begin to understand, like, for example, I used to work with a guy called Peter in a supermarket, and he's a really nice guy, really friendly. It wouldn't happen often, but every now and again, he'd have like a really bad episode. It might happen on the shop floor. And his best friend worked there as well, and he knew exactly how to talk to his friend. Like he knew what to say and how to like guide him through it and stuff like that. And a lot of it came down to just being patient, calm, trying to kind of because the way I understand it, it's almost like a sensory overload meets panic attack meets whatever. Something triggers it off, and then it's about the operation is to try and get back to that kind of calm space again. But like how long it takes to get there, that could vary. You know, it could be a few minutes, could be half an hour, who knows? You know, and a lot of it I think comes down to the people around you because people might think that they're helping and they're not, they're making it worse. I think in a scenario like that where a lot of people don't understand, that's problematic. My question to you, I guess, is like in general, let's say you're completely ignorant and you don't know how to approach someone who might be struggling. What's the best way to kind of approach the situation like that?
With seizures, I would say the best situation to approach is to I've never had seizures, so it's gonna be hard for me to answer.
Okay.
But I think just being around them, despite it being scary. I had a friend who had a seizure once.
Hmm.
First time, hoping not to see it again, but I was like, all right, I'm just gonna be here with you. I ain't walking away from you. I'm gonna let people who know what they're doing handle this.
When you've struggled and people have helped you, like what have been the things that helped you?
I would say what helps me the most is just support and patience.
Hmm.
Patience, patience, patience. Despite me not having it, you gotta work with me, or it's not gonna work between us at all.
It's fair enough. Yeah, I mean that's the thing I've always understood, and I think in general, like outside of people having autism, in general, like just patience in life will go a long way. Like in any scenario, you know, you match that emotion, whatever it might be, with patience and a calm kind of demeanor, and you'd be surprised how quickly a scenario can change. You know, I think a lot of it comes down to just that person feeling safe that they can, you know, like reach that place of calm again. You know, let's talk about your company. So you run a non-profit organization called Autism Rocks and Rolls. How did it come to be?
Well, it started. I joined my high school's media club, and I fell in love with it so much. I decided to start my own podcast, and that was when Autism Rocks and Rolls was born.
Okay. And over the years, what would you say have been like the kind of the most rewarding experiences you've had so far?
Well, having big names on the shows for one, but also having the privilege of playing out events and being an international speaker.
Hmm.
Who would have known I would have had the privilege to go to Canada 2 years ago? If you'd have told me 5 years ago, hey, Sam, you're going to go to Canada, I would have laughed in your face.
Well, you've done a lot of public speaking, so this has been obviously something you've been able to do off the back of this. And like, what advice could you give to people about public speaking? Like, how have you learned to kind of put together a show and inspire other people?
Well, I'm still a newbie, so the best advice I can give for public speaking is just go on stage and give a message. That's your first step. If you're not willing to do the first step, don't even bother. And I get it. There's a lot of people who would rather have anxiety over public speaking. It's the number one fear. But here's the kicker. Do you really think you're going to get booed off the stage? Heck, I thought I was going to get booed off the stage, yet I haven't
I think
quite yet.
probably the worst thing though is apathy, isn't it? Like you know, like you crack a joke, no one says anything. Like for instance, I play music, right, and occasionally I'll crack jokes or I'll just talk in between songs, or you'll be like, "Hey, who likes the Doors?" Silence. And you're just like you can hear a pin drop, and you're like, "Okay, all right, well, we'll move on then." It is just you just have to hang in there. But I think that can be paralyzing. Like, how do you approach that when your audience just won't give you anything?
Problem is, people won't make light of it. Instead of
Well, yeah.
Instead of just, you guys are no fun. That didn't work at all. Let's just move on. It's, oh boy, I'm done. I screwed up.
So what is it they say? The show must go on. You have to just kind of hang in there, really, don't you? What would you say are the biggest misconceptions about autism that people continue to have?
People forget there's a whole spectrum. There's this video from a certain company that we don't like, and
Oh,
they
okay.
forget there's a whole spectrum. They only think there's a population out there who can't brush their teeth, who
Hmm.
can't put on clothes, who can't even use the bathroom on their own, who can't maybe even get out of bed,
Mhm.
who all they do is if you knock down blocks, they have a big meltdown and blow up. Now, I'm not going to deny there is a population out there who have that version of autism, but people forget about people like myself who can get a job, who actually is very intelligent, who's going to college for broadcasting, but just sucks at socializing. And people forget there's a middle end of the road who maybe can still get a job, but have to live with their parents for the rest of their life.
When it comes to that aspect that you struggle at, socialization aspect, how have you sort of learned to approach that?
Well, I have to socialize my way or I don't socialize at all.
Okay. So
And even if it's not what society sees, so be it.
so it's kind of like about bringing people to a space that you feel comfortable and then communicating with them that way. Is that kind of what you mean? You know.
Sure, it's also the way I do it might be a little off.
Okay.
Maybe I have before switched topics unintentionally, but I say really, who cares?
Conversation's a conversation, isn't it? I mean, crikey, like for me, the things that have always bugged me about getting into conversations is when the other person either isn't listening or they're not engaged, stuff like that. That's the stuff that matters. Whether or not the conversation is how it's structured is fine. I think the only thing is if you are jumping from topic to topic, sometimes it can be difficult to keep up. I'm pretty slow because I'm getting older, so that can be tricky for me. But I don't know. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of it all, really, isn't it? You know, you talk. Certainly, with me doing this podcast for the last 4 years, I've spoken to people from all sorts of walks of life, and it's taught me to approach every single conversation like a blank canvas. Like, yeah, I might know how to talk to people and interview people and stuff, but every single time is a new challenge, is a new test, you know? What would you say you've learned through podcasting?
So what I learned through podcasting is you have people on your back. I never thought that you could have it. And it's a feeling I'm still getting used to, believe it or not, to this day. I've been over on 100 podcasts, yet I still fear of getting bullied some days
By who? By online people?
by by the podcasters, the hosts.
Wow. Really?
Yes,
That's never happened, surely.
it's never happened,
Okay.
but it's
I
a
was,
fear.
I was going to say that's the worst thing that.
Thank God it's never happened. I would have killed people by then.
Oh, it's just the worst thing you could ever do as a host. I think is mock your guest. I mean, the guest makes the show. Without the guest, you have no show.
It's crazy. I'm not gonna deny it,
I,
but when you've been standing in the back with pencils, it's not easy to get rid of the needles.
I hope that's not a literal memory there.
No, it kind of is. I got stabbed in the back with pencils once, but the needles part is a figurative language.
It's crazy how when you're a kid, other kids can be like that cruel. Like I remember crazy stuff happening both to me and people I knew. And it's funny, like you see those same people in adult life and they don't act that way anymore, but they're not apologetic for who they were. And I don't know, that sense of cruelty. I don't know where that comes from. When I was at school, I just wanted to kind of get through it, like most kids. Do you know what I mean? I hated it because I think school is an uncomfortable experience, and obviously, if you've got a condition like autism, it makes it that much harder, doesn't it? Because school is like so uniform and like everything must be this way, and that's just not how life works. You know, we're all very different. We all learn in different ways. We all have our own challenges. You know, like for instance, like I suck at maths. I'm pretty sure I have dyscalculia or whatever it is. Even just basic maths, like I don't know, sitting and doing your five times table, like I have to double check myself. And I know to other people, that might look like I'm really stupid, and maybe you're right. I don't know, but it's like yourself. I always ask for that bit of um patience, I guess, 'cause that's the word that you used earlier. I think that's fair, you know, because we've got areas that we're really strong in and areas that we're not. And I think a lot of the time you're waiting for that passion, so compassion and patience from people. And when it's not there, it's difficult to kind of navigate that. Um, but bringing it back to podcasting, it's interesting that like when you go on other people's shows, I always like to think that the best thing to do is roll out the red carpet. You know, every time I have a guest on my show, that's you are the king, queen, whatever. Like that's how it should be. It should be a show. Whereas I think a lot of shows these days, they're just looking for clips. They're looking for those moments where they can just be like, right, that's a clip, that's a moment. I can put down social media and get 100,000 hits, whatever. And I just think that's the wrong way about going about things. I've been on show. This is why I don't really appear on other people's shows anymore because every time I do, I either get forgotten about, which is crazy. Like I remember one show I went on, there was like three or four people on it, and it was just like a group of dudes chatting. That's cool, you know, no worries. But I was very much in the background, and I was kind of like, why am I here? Like, should I leave? Like, I don't know. And other times it's been like you try and get conversation going, right? And then I don't know. By that 20 minutes in, they're just like, right, that's it. See you later. And you're like, we just got started. Where's the conversation? I just find that frustrating. What have been some of the challenging moments for you in podcasting?
In podcasting, the challenging moments is I have a very limited patience with technology,
Yeah, same. Yeah.
and I am not a fan of it. It's the one part of the job I hate with podcasting is technology.
It's,
And sometimes in our situation, because my internet's so damn stupid, um, it really is. I'm sorry, but we will literally. I'll be in the middle of the interview, and the internet will just go,
yeah.
and the interview is. It's not like done for, but I have to, switch the internet connection. And it's so frustrating.
Do you know, here's a few things I've learned over the years about just saving your ass when it comes to podcasting. So I record through two programs, right? I use Zoom, obviously, and then I also record through an audio um, software, whatever. It's called NCH software, some Australian one. Um, and there's been a few times it's actually saved me because the internet went off, it didn't work, whatever, like Zoom crashed, and now you've not got a show, right? And I always had this as a backup. I don't ever use it, but I have used it a few times. But there's been times I've gone on other people's shows. Like I'm sure you've heard of, I think, was it Riverside or whatever it's called?
Oh God,
Oh, ev
no,
everyone
no,
uses
no,
that. It's so
no.
trash. It's just terrible.
It may be high quality interviews, but with me after the interview, okay, Zoom will when we probably hang up here. It's gonna be 30 minutes, right, to get the thing file uploaded. For me, it takes 2 hours. I'm like, I'm not waiting 2 hours for this.
Well, see, this is the thing as well. If you're the host, you sit there, you leave the tab open, it does its thing, right? Now, if you're the guest, you're supposed to do the same thing. What if I quickly go on your show and then the show's over and I go off to work? I'm going to close my computer down. So guess what? That browser is closing down and your file is gone. And that's crazy. I don't understand how you can put a show together where it relies on the Wi-Fi and also the other person being there, if you know what I mean. Like just leaving their computer on to or their phone or whatever. Like I don't know. I think that's really risky, and I can't believe they're
It
pushing
is.
it.
You better have top of the notch internet if you're to do Riverside because the internet at my school is pretty good and it's top of the notch. So I just do Riverside interviews there if I can.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I don't know what's going to come as the new thing in podcasting, but I hope it's a damn sight better than Riverside. Let's move it forward. Actually, yeah. What advice could you give to aspiring podcasters?
My advice for aspiring podcasters is if you're going to do a podcast, you better have a message.
Mm,
Even
okay.
though you're interviewing great people, I'm sure there's a message to your podcast.
What would you say yours is?
To change the stigma off of autism and other conditions that may think are disabilities. People on the spectrum are not broken down and to be fixed. Those with conditions or those who ought to be pitied, there's nothing to be sorry about. I know that off the top of my head because I've had to state it 1,000 times, as you can tell,
Why do you feel that there's still a stigma surrounding autism? Like, why are people like that? Do you think?
because people would put that in front instead of just me. We ran into that the other day. So I met someone's friend's parents for the
Yeah.
first time. Lovely people. I wouldn't say anything mean about them. There was nothing harsh. But when I left, they had these two ladies. I don't know how they were associated with the family. I can't remember. But they looked at her like he was like I was odd because I talked in the monotone voice. And the lady, I think she was trying to defend me a little bit, maybe, but she said to them, he's autistic.
Okay.
Why didn't you say I'm his friend from college? Why did that not come up first?
Oh, I know what you mean. You mean like she's kind of almost being like apologetic in a way.
Yeah, in a sense.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get what you mean. Yeah, that sucks when people are like that. So, I've had similar experiences myself, not quite the same, but like where people react a certain way to something, and I always feel like calling them out on it and just being like, "Hey, say what you think." Like I had it the other day at work. There was a scenario where I was just offering to help someone because it seemed easier to do it that way, and they didn't want the help. I pushed it a little bit, they didn't want it, and then I left it. And then someone else just piped up and was just like, "Yeah, you go. Yeah, you tell them." And I'm just thinking like this isn't one of those scenarios. I wasn't trying to like thrust my masculinity on this person. I was just trying to help because it seemed I was like, hey, I've got some energy. I could help with this. I had to like move some tables basically, and it would have been just quicker for me to do it rather than just leave it and then they have to do it Monday morning. You
Yeah.
know.
You're like, fight, 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 fight.
Well, it's the last time I offer my help to people that don't want it. I'm like, all right, fine. But you don't have to make it into a thing. Like I hate when people do that. They make something out of a situation that isn't there. Like they make a problem that isn't there. That's something that bugs me. And I feel like I've definitely seen it with people and their ignorance of autism over the years. People we're just people, we just have like different challenges in life. That's all it is. And if you look at it like that, I think it becomes a lot easier. Like all my friends I've had over the years that have autism, the only thing I could ever really say might be a challenge sometimes is like social skills. But again, it's really not a big deal. Like you just work around it, you work with each other, and lo and behold, it's not a big deal.
There's a lot worse problems in the world right now compared to us not figuring out social skills.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, fair enough. What's been the most rewarding experience with your work with autism advocacy?
To see there are people out there who care, and some are no due to having it, some are due to being related to it, But there are some out there who hopped in. I mean, Al Snow volunteered to be on the show. Are you kidding me? I had a mental health advocate because they care.
Yeah.
It's to see people who aren't involved but are interested in the work and want to learn. It's the guy who checks out the podcast not because of, oh my gosh, his mother is on the autism spectrum, or my daughter's on the autism spectrum. I think I'm glad you need to check it out. Don't get me wrong, because online content's not the best, but it's to see like, oh, he has autism. Well, because it's so relevant in the world, I need to learn about this, and then they check it out, or they hear it one time.
That's a really good point, actually. I think a lot of the time when it comes to things like this, an ignorance about something, why not go and learn about it? Why not? That's what Google's for. It's not the 90s anymore. You don't have to rely on like public library and a really shitty ass encyclopedia. Like you can just Google stuff and learn and teach yourself. And now you know.
Well, that's a problem, actually.
Go on.
Here's the problem with online. It doesn't tell you about what you can do about it. It
Okay.
will tell you, okay, those on a spectrum will have meltdowns. It doesn't say those on a spectrum will have meltdowns, but here's what you can do to manage it. It just says they have meltdowns. So what? What are we supposed to do about it? How can we manage it? I don't want to be embarrassed now. Come on.
I think with something like that, maybe it's something you got to learn firsthand. I mean, I don't know. Like you talk about patience. I learned how to be patient as a person through life experience, through learning to like just hang in there. And when people are really confiding in you, they're struggling, they're really suffering, you learn to be the antithesis of that. You learn to be the calm kind of ocean that they need, you know?
Yeah, I hear
Uh,
you.
but again, that's something you learn. I think the biggest thing I learned with autism and seeing friends like really struggle where that's concerned is just to be like nice and kind and and yeah, patient. But then if someone's having like like a panic attack or something like that, anxiety. I suffer from anxiety, so I can relate all too well to that. It's just being calm. It's just creating a safe space. Because I always look at people's eyes when I talk to them, right? And I feel like your eyes can tell a thousand stories. Your eyes say it all. And in
Me,
those
I don't play the eye.
moments,
That's where I'm a polar opposite of you, buddy. I don't play the eye contact game.
yeah, fair enough. Well, what I mean is like that's normally where you can tell something is wrong, and you need to sort of be like, okay, hey, it's okay. Look at me. It's okay. Obviously, if someone is uncomfortable doing eye contact, that's fine. Then you focus on voice, auditory, because obviously tonality is important, isn't it? If you're shouting at someone, if you're like, "Hey, what's wrong? What's wrong? Calm down," that's not going to fucking work. You need to be a bit more like, "Hey, it's okay. Talk to me. What do you need? Like, you okay? Talk to me." And that's you build your communication that way. I feel like
I
online
agree.
resources can't really teach that. Maybe they could. I don't know, but hopefully we see more resources like that online in the future. That would be really helpful. What have been your kind of biggest success stories with your nonprofit? Like, what have been the biggest ways you've helped people?
Well, we're not doing this yet, but it's in its infancy stages. We're making modules,
Oh, nice one.
those with autism, and it's going to be kind of like a database.
Wow.
That's the one we were going to help. But the way I'm helping now is planning these events. I mean, we have our gala annually, and our goal is to literally celebrate a population that doesn't quite often get celebrated or either gets ignored way too often. And these speaking engagements, sure, is it cool to be in Canada? Yes, I'm not gonna lie. It's a nice luxury, but it's not the goal. It's not the goal to go spend the night in a fancy hotel. The goal literally is to tell you my story and what you can do. And I obviously try to add some twist in there. I mean, it's to tell about technology one time. The other was about to tell how the podcasting helped myself out. The other time was to share the story, and that was it.
What have been some of the most meaningful interactions you've had with other people? Because I'm sure a lot of people approach you when you're doing these public speaking events and stuff, and there's probably some kids there or whatever that have autism. Maybe it's they've just found out and they're trying to kind of understand the next steps. Like, what have been the most rewarding, most memorable interactions you've had with people?
Well, there's two that I can think off the top of my head. First one, it was in Oklahoma. I think they had another vendor who heard about me, and their job was literally to hire people with intellectual disabilities, no matter their understanding level. And some of their job was literally write names on the coffee cups. And there's her brother who heard about me, loved what I did. He told my partner slash my mother when I wasn't looking, I was probably in the bathroom or something. Your son gives me hope.
Wow, that's powerful.
It is. And then another one was at the Family Fun Fair. I was a vendor for a vending trade show, and someone was walking by our booth, and you could tell she was on the autism spectrum, and she didn't like how much people were there. So there's this couch they had apparently for her or for the children. And I thought, let me go hang with her just to see how she's like, because that's me, it's who I am. I like to hang out with people, even though she's a lot younger than me. I'll interact with a stranger. I think you could tell based on doing these interviews and
Mhm.
knowing me a little bit. But when I interacted with her, I learned from her mother after the interaction, she doesn't open up to a lot of people. I was the only one in that building who can get her to open up because in her brain, she felt safe. I know this because that's what the mother told me.
What would you say are the key, let's say, life lessons you've learned through autism advocacy?
I would say the key life lessons I learned through autism advocacy is you met one person on the autism spectrum, you met one person on the autism spectrum. Not on the autism spectrum is very similar to one another. We might have some similar behaviors, but we're all not going to love Pokemon.
I get it. I get it. Here's one that I like to ask people. I always switch the question up, obviously. What has autism taught you about life?
It's taught me the way other people see things, and despite me not agreeing with it, I realize I have to go with it and adapt. Or if I don't adapt in some cases, I will not make it. Despite me not liking wallets because the money is too dang big for it, I realize most people put money in wallets. So I better do it as well.
It's interesting that as well. Like, I feel like we should really be meeting in the middle. You talk about adaptability, and that's interesting to me that you have to be the one to adapt to the way society is, right? And it's like when I see efforts made to cater for the different types of people that exist in society, I see that as society moving forward, progressing, albeit slowly, but still progressing nonetheless. But when you hear people saying like, "Well, I have to adapt to this and that," I think it's a lot harder. You know, like a good example, okay, is let's say you see there's a new building that's just been built. Beautiful, it's got all the great facilities, but there's no wheelchair access. That's now a whole group of people you've excluded from your building. Now, you could make the argument, well, we've catered for everyone else. And it's like, yeah, but you've excluded this group. Why? You could have just built a ramp, could have built a lift. Other people have. Why haven't you? I look at it like that. Like you got to kind of consider all people in society and try
I'm
to
in a
cater for all.
situation with that currently,
Okay.
kind of. There's a bar that's a big sponsor of mine, and we're both over 21, and I get that he can't go there because of there's no lift or ramp. I mean, there's stairs, and it's not really handicapped accessible the way the building's built. But boy, would I love to go and have a couple of drinks with him.
There you go. I feel like a lot of the time as well, it's a problem that's easily solved as well. Like that, there's a bar that I go to that it had a refurb recently, and they still don't have a ramp, and it puzzles me because it's right on the high street, easy access. You could just put a ramp in, and it'd be really easy to do that, and they just haven't. Like, why? And a lot of places you see are like that. They don't think of that. They just expect, I don't know, your buddy to help you pull your wheelchair in, and it's like, I don't know. I feel like we should be working together more. Maybe,
People
maybe I
forget
just
wheelchairs don't have wings. They can't fly up the stairs, buddy.
pretty much, yeah. So this is interesting. When I was doing my research on you, I found that you offer business coaching services. So what key pieces of advice could you share for people wanting to start a business?
Well, I think what you need to figure out what you want to do first, and then advertise it, and then promote it. But if you think it could work into a job and you don't think it, try again. It's possible. One of my guests, believe it or not, was homeless, and he made money by doing a food truck, and the rest is history.
Nice.
He's now working a food truck company. He was doing something else, but had to quit that job, a hobby that was just mainly for sidelines. The food truck was a sideline, but it turned to a full big time occupation.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting hearing this right now because I'm at a bit of a crossroads in my own life, and I'm like wondering what to do to survive, kind of thing. And it's interesting hearing stories like that. What starts as something on the side becomes your life. That's incredible. I think a lot of it comes down to just taking a chance on things, really, doesn't it? Maybe this will go somewhere, maybe it won't. But if you're helping people, it'll always be something valuable. That's for sure.
Yeah, when we started a nonprofit, I had to take a chance. We had to have a family meeting if we're going to go through with this, and we decided to take the chance. Sadly, I haven't made enough to pay the bills, but maybe it'll happen one day. We'll see.
Yeah, you never know, man. You never know. What advice could you give to people who are just receiving their autism diagnosis?
Don't treat it like a death sentence. It's not. There's ways out there you could survive. We've had a dad before literally come up to us and sob because he thought his life was over. He went to the internet. Don't listen to the internet all the way. They're going to tell you some facts.
Yeah, they'll also tell you a lot of stuff that isn't true or is a real gross
True.
exaggeration. Yeah, it's like, you're right, you're right. All right, a couple of final questions for you. What's the best advice you've ever received?
The best advice I've ever received is to pretty much, I need to understand that life's too short not to laugh. And I have understand that as time went on. But also, I take a lot of personal time as a business owner. Life's not all business.
Good stuff, man. Thank you. What's the biggest life lesson you've learned so far?
Honestly, the biggest life lesson I've learned is to take in the simple things. A lot of times I've been outside this summer to just enjoy the sunshine because I may not be seeing it tomorrow.
Damn. Okay, yeah. Yeah, fair play. It's a good way of looking at things. Final question for you. Do you have any upcoming projects or final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, let's see here. Upcoming projects. We just got done with the motorcycle poker run. It was fun. A lot of bikers, 31 total came through. I will be selling food, I believe, at some point. And then I have a couple speaking gigs coming up in Houston, Texas,
Woo.
and keynote speaking gig in Daniels, West Virginia, with who's the keynote speaker? It's me, apparently.
Yeah, congrats, man.
And then the final thoughts of advice. I don't think it's final thoughts. I think it's just the truth. If the world could be nice and not act so stupid, don't you think we get along so much better?
Pretty much. Yeah. I don't, it's like with what I do, like I try my best to just put something positive out into the world. It's not often that I get like things back, like positive stuff, good stuff. A lot of life, in my experience, is a fight, and you just have to kind of hang in there. Um, but you know what? Sometimes it is rewarding, and sometimes you do get positive stuff. And I think, yeah, I was talking to my stepmom yesterday about life and challenges and stuff, and she said, if you can find a way, like you said, to keep laughing, to find the positives, like to stay true to yourself, then it makes it a lot easier. It doesn't solve the problem, but it does mean you can at least get something out of life. And I try my best to lift others up, even if I'm still falling over. So I think there's something to that at least. Massive thank you for appearing on the show, man. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. I wish you all the best, and yeah, thank you so much.
Anytime, bud. Good to be here.
And to all the listeners of the Christian Reeve podcast, I hope you enjoyed this show as much as I did. Make sure, as always, to leave a review, to subscribe, share the podcast around. It really, really helps us out. Also, make sure to subscribe on Patreon to get yourself exclusive bonus content. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, I'll see you in the next one.